So a responsible commentator, an international security consultant, former Special Forces soldier. I wrote operator in the subject line of the email for this. My fault. Operator means something. I should remind myself, never try to use military jargon. It means a thing. So former Special Forces soldier is with us, Mike O'Rourke. He gets to be the responsible one, looking at all the data, looking at it dispassionately. I get to be the person who breaks the Ben Shapiro rule. Sorry, Ben, of just asking questions. And I have a ton of them about the New Orleans and Las Vegas terrorist attacks. So we'll get a much more important point of view than mine. Mike O'Rourke actually knows what he's talking about. We'll do this with the help of Bulwark Capital Management, KnowYourRiskRadio.com, and through the great auspices of God Almighty.
The Todd Herman Show is 100% disapproved by big pharma, technocrats, and tyrants everywhere. No. From the high mountains of free America, here's the Emerald City exile, Todd Herman.
Today is the day the Lord has made, and these are the times in which God has decided we shall live. My friend Mike O'Rourke joins us all the way in the studio in the High Mountains of Free America. We shake hands on set. Good to see you, my friend. Thank you for coming. Let me just ask you this. Let's start with Las Vegas and what went on there. And I don't say guys' names when something like this happens because sometimes they want their name said or wanted them said. But let's talk job capabilities and what we know about this former Special Forces soldier and his capabilities, starting with the big question a lot of people are asking. You're telling me this guy couldn't have built a better bomb?
I think he definitely could have, even though, like I said, he was his military occupational specialties were 18 Echo, which is SF Communications Sergeant, 18 Fox, Special Forces Intel Sergeant, and then 18 Zulu, Special Forces Operations Sergeant or Team Sergeant on ODA. So explosives, not his primary job. But yeah, everyone gets training, and there are other courses out there that he may have gone to where you could definitely put together a competent device, even with materials that are available out there.
Yeah.
So, and what he put together was not set to go as a high order detonation. So there's a lot of questions to be answered there.
Well, I mean, there's a whole series of questions I think that are going to be answered and have to be answered. I personally, and you guys, you might be in a different position than me on this. I have a very limited reserve of trust for the leadership of the FBI. So I'm watching this unfold in Las Vegas, and I hear, okay, apparently this guy shot himself in the head. We'll talk about that in a second. But there's this video. It's the second one we have up today, Alex, so we're going to switch orders. That apparently they determined quickly through a coroner that this guy shot himself in the head before the device went off.
Further complicating this identification of this individual, we also discovered through the coroner's office that the individual had sustained a gunshot wound to the head prior to the detonation of the vehicle. One of the handguns was found at his feet inside of the vehicle.
So let's talk about this real quick, and then we'll get into the bigger picture. But this stuff is, everybody's questioning this. The Cybertruck pulls up. 17 seconds later, the bomb goes off, the poorly built bomb inside of a well-sealed truck. And this guy had offed himself already?
I mean, that's what they're saying. I mean, how did they determine it so fast? If the handgun that was used was, I said, one of the ones they found in the truck, which is a Desert Eagle 50 caliber Action Express, it's going to leave a half-inch size hole, in one side, and then probably a much larger hole on the other side. So that might be fairly easy to determine.
Okay.
And I don't think the bomb was designed for fragmentation, so probably not a shrapnel hole. But if you got a half-inch on one side and then a 1-inch exit, or more exit wound, it might be possible to see that fairly quick, even on a badly burned body. Okay, so that could be obvious. I mean, if you know what you're looking for and you've seen things like this, it could be obvious this guy was shot. And you don't think there would have been a lot of fragmentation. Maybe you've watched the video. You know what a bomb looks like. Unfortunately, you've probably been too close to too many of them. Do you buy that his ID survived this? It all depends on where it was. Was it on him? I mean, those things, his military ID or common access card, CAC card, is it's plastic. It's not paper.
Yeah.
And it looks like it sustained some damage.
Yeah.
But you'd be surprised what survives an explosion.
Okay. You've done some research, and apparently there is a manifesto, and we'll talk about this in a second with Mike O'Rourke. Then I want to level up to the big picture because there's things you've warned us about, and I got chills because there's some things you've been warning us about, for about 3 years. There's some things to look for in terms of graduated tactics. We get to have conversations like this with friends like this because of friends like Zach Abraham, the Chief Investment Officer, Bulwark Capital Management. And Zach was first money into this program, and it's been a great marriage. It really has. Our viewers and listeners have had great results working with Zach at Bulwark Capital Management. He is, number one, a fiduciary, meaning he must put our financial interests above his own. But his financial interests are tied to ours in that he and his wife have 90% of their net worth in Bulwark Capital Management. Incidentally, most fund managers don't do that. So as Bulwark goes, so goes Zach's financial future. Zach's also been very, very consistent talking about risk management. And if 2 terrorist attacks on our soil, home soil, on the first day of the new year don't tell you that we're headed for volatility, then maybe you're not looking close enough. Volatility can be your friend if your portfolio is being actively managed, which can allow you to take advantage of volatility and can reduce risk of volatility. Zach is 100% focused, in fact, annoyingly so, on risk management. You should try to order pizza with the guy sometime. Risk management. What's the likelihood of this one getting burned? So he will be that way with your money as well. That's why I have my money with him. So he'll do this for you. He'll look at your portfolio for free. No obligation, no hurt feelings if you say, hey, bud, I want to do this on my own. No hurt feelings. So have him look. Go to knowyourriskradio.com. That's KNOW, knowyourriskradio.com, or call them at 866-779-RISK. Investment advisory services offered through Trek Financial LLC and SEC-registered investment advisor. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Trek 24-378. You've been doing your own research in this, Mike O'Rourke, and apparently there is supposedly a manifesto that a pretty well-known podcaster has.
Yeah, and that episode's apparently not out yet. He released it, kind of, I guess you call it a teaser this morning.
Yeah, Sean Ryan.
Yeah, Sean Ryan. Supposedly there was an analyst or a former analyst that received an email from the Vegas guy, from the active duty Special Forces soldier, that probably says why he's doing this, and some information I'm seeing says he names names. What that means remains to be seen, because as we're doing this show now, that episode of Sean Ryan's show is not out yet.
So if this is real, and if it's his manifesto, then we're going to have to match this up against a career that was on the rise. Yep. And you had actually posted something, you sent me something this morning, texted. This came from Jack Murphy. And Jack was aware, apparently, of this manifesto was coming up. But he writes in this tweet that you forwarded me, this guy sounds like he had a lot of respect, that he was on the rise, getting more and more responsibility. So this is complete supposition between you and I. But if he did this thing, and I have my doubts, I have severe doubts about this. But if he did this thing, it seems like something, no pun intended, blew up in his life.
Yeah, I mean, again, as you say, supposition. But I've heard, without attribution anywhere, that I think his second marriage was apparently just falling apart right before Christmas. And his wife, I mean, they just had a baby back in June, I think.
Yeah.
So they have an infant. Word is something happened. And when you combine that, if you got these stressors building up, along with, I think he's got like some 5 combat tours, that can do something to a guy.
Yeah.
So it's hard to say. Hopefully, we don't know if it's an actual manifesto or did he just send an email that names some things. Maybe explanation is there.
Yeah.
But based on what I saw, I mean, it was kind of a spectacular looking explosion, but didn't really cause damage. I just don't know what was going through his mind.
Well, no, and I don't think any of us do, and I don't want to make this. I don't mean this to be glib, but a lot of people in the Special Forces community have been saying Desert Eagle.
Yeah.
Okay, I have yet to meet someone in Special Forces. In fact, I was telling you earlier, our common friend Tim Cruikshank from Bone Frog said, ask O'Rourke about the Desert Eagle?
Yeah, I don't know anyone that has one. It's not a, it's more like a, I mean, yeah, it's a very powerful weapon, but it's almost more like a toy. Like you got some spare money and your gun collection is already pretty filled out with, all the stuff you want. What am I going to get now just to have fun with? So yeah, it's definitely a strange choice.
Yeah. There was also this, and this is disconcerting to me, that this comes from Matt Tardio, and she wrote, "Wait before assuming guilt. Matthew Leisberger is the suspect in the Tesla bombing at the Trump Hotel. Twice last month, someone pretending to be a Green Beret from my former Operation Detachment Alpha sister team contacted me and showed extensive knowledge of personal information about the Green Beret they were claiming to be, who's still on active duty. The person who contacted me claimed to be suicidal, likely an attempt to get me to swat his, in quotes, house with either police or Green Berets to make sure he was okay. This would have given away his location if it was not already known. Matt Leibsberger served in the same ODA and held the same position as the person who was impersonated. A lot is not adding up about this situation in Vegas." I read that. I think about scenarios. I do not trust the FBI. And I start to wonder, okay, so they have their guy. I don't think there's any question about the guy in New Orleans. We need to talk about that because that gave me chills because you've been warning us about something. But I'm looking at a scenario where this guy is either taken against his will or told he needs to do a thing. He refuses to do a thing. They shoot him in the head, strap his hands to the Cybertruck steering wheel, which apparently has an autopilot mode, which requires you to touch the steering wheel, but full self-driving doesn't. But you said there needs to be an attentive driver there, and they send the car in front of the hotel and blow it up.
Elon Musk in a tweet yesterday said that there has to be an attentive driver behind the wheel. I've only seen Cybertrucks driving past on the road, so I have no idea how they actually operate.
Yeah.
But you've known me long enough to know how I generally feel about conspiracies,
right,
as well. And often the simplest answer is closer to the truth. And I still think it's going to probably come down to something happening in his life where he decided to take the off ramp and just for some reason chose to do it in a very spectacular fashion.
Okay, so this though gets me to the biggest question of questions. Both these guys rent electric trucks. Both of them rent them from the same company. Both of them do this on the same day. Both of them with remote detonation devices. Both of them in the vehicle. The guy in New Orleans having gotten out and tried to shoot. The guy in Vegas had weapons. He had a rifle, but I've heard and seen images that show no optics mechanisms on it. So no ability to actually aim the rifle. You could point it, but not aim it. And that's a lot of commonalities. The Fort Bragg, and you're not as bothered by that as I am, the Fort Liberty, Fort Bragg. I just see all these connections, and we have the FBI saying there's no connection to this at all.
There's no sign of any radicalization in the Vegas case.
Yeah.
Jihadist Islamic radicalization that I've been able to determine. There are a lot of strange coincidences. Maybe they are just that. I think there's still a lot more that has to be learned. But yeah, the New Orleans one, definitely jihadist attack, definitely ISIS inspired. And one of the things I've been warning about ever since the doors to the southern border were thrown wide open.
Okay, and there's something very specific you've been warning us about, and I'm going to remind people of that here in just a second. If you're watching us live, you have questions for Mike, feel free to put them into the chat room, and so we'll make sure people know how to get in touch with you because you're in the business of helping businesses protect themselves against this, and you've been doing a great job of helping individuals have situational awareness to protect themselves against things like this, and so we'll make sure that we talk about that. Hey, I'm making another trip to Mexico, and right now we have scheduled this for somewhere around the end of March, and it may go a little bit further back than that. I'm giving you a heads up on this. If you've been thinking about going to Renew Healthcare, and you've been thinking about that and to help address pain or to avoid surgery or to solve things like neuropathy or even for the aesthetics they do, if your wife or husband or loved one uses Botox, don't. Use ethically gathered stem cells from placentas and umbilical cords. Actually regrow the cells in your face instead of paralyzing them with cow bacteria. I mean, what a concept. Because, hey, Botox, that ain't going to get paid for by insurance either. Why won't insurance pay so that you can avoid surgery? Well, why would they want to do that? They're on each other's boards. Big medicine is one big cartel, except for companies like Renew that operate outside of that equilibrium. And I'm here to testify to you that if you're watching this shoulder, my left shoulder, I was just lifting the other day with my sports med doc and trying to stay somewhere near him in a clean and jerk complex we were doing. And Ben said, Todd, you got to start stretching your left shoulder again, man. It's like really stiff. I go, isn't it amazing? My left shoulder, that's 3 years after surgery, or about 2.5 years after surgery, is not as good as my right shoulder. My right shoulder is a year out of surgery. What's the difference? Well, the major difference is stem cells in the right shoulder, no stem cells in the left. It'll help you recover better, and it will help you avoid surgery. So if you're thinking about doing this, get in now. Go to renew.healthcare. That's RENUE.healthcare, because there's some work that applies to make sure you're a good candidate. They want to make sure this is going to provide you benefit. So if you get in now, we can time our trips together and go down and hang out together. So go to Renew, RENUE.healthcare. That's RENUE.healthcare. Please tell them you're part of the Todd Herman Show family. In New Orleans, so much to talk about here as well. Apparently, the New Orleans had been saying, and now this is the FBI director saying, this has been taken down. There's some debate, did he mean recently or not? Fox News reports that this guy had become radicalized. His family had separated from him because they were concerned about him, and he'd been apparently posting some things.
My platform proclaiming his support for ISIS. There were 5 videos posted on Jabbar's Facebook account, which are time-stamped beginning at 1:29 a.m. and the last at 3:02 a.m. In the first video, Jabbar explains he originally planned to harm his family and friends, but was concerned the news headlines would not focus on the, quote, war between the believers and the disbelievers, end quote. Additionally, he stated he had joined ISIS before this summer. He also provided a will and testament.
There's also been some videos posted and taken down from TikTok saying that this guy had posted things early on, maybe months ago. That's being debated, so fair enough. But when this guy's posting things like this, he's been radicalized. Here's what gave me chills. He got out of the vehicle. He did not intend to. You have been warning us about this. Please explain the significance of someone going and ramming people down and then getting out to continue shooting.
I mean, that's reminiscent of, I believe it was the London Bridge attack in London some years back, where they did the vehicle ramming attack, and then I think it was 2 or 3 jihadists jumped out with knives and started going after people. That makes it more of a complex attack. And whether he intended to die or survive and live to fight another day, he was still bent on inflicting further casualties. I know he shot 2 police officers who were engaging him. And one of the things I've long worried about is whether it's individual or a cell that they do an attack, but like say they attack by rifle fire, break contact, study the media afterwards, get their lessons learned, and then launch another attack and keep trying to survive and do more and more attacks. That's a more complex scenario, because most of the jihadists tend to go on one-way missions. But if they start doing that, more like insurgents, like we were fighting in Iraq or Afghanistan, where they want to do an attack and then come back and hit you again, that's a more dangerous, complex thing. Fortunately, most people don't seem to be going that route, and it's hard for them to organize. But with the border having been open for pretty much the last 4 years, we don't know who's come in. There's I think some 2 million gutaways. Those were never encountered by the Border Patrol. But even amongst those who were encountered, there have been hundreds on the terrorist watch list. And I always thought, well, the smart ones, the really dedicated ones, they're not going to get caught. They're not going to get into the system. They're going to come in where we don't even know they're here, and then try to link up with either supporters or someone in their own home country diaspora, and then start building their plans from there.
If you were going to put on a jihadist hat and you wanted to plan a scenario like that where there's a mass casualty event and then there's an after action and then people disappear into the ether to go live and shoot and again, what would you concentrate on?
It'd be it could be anything from let's say sporting events, not necessarily attacking the venue, but you hit the crowds that before they even get to the security perimeter for the event. Bourbon Street is a classic example. You could hit anything: schools, malls. Just imagine hitting. It doesn't have to be spectacular, like say in big cities. Imagine a small town getting shot up, where there's shorter. Possibly a longer response time because there's a lot smaller law enforcement presence, right? Much easier to escape. And then you come back and do that again. You start having these attacks going around small town America, big cities, where all of a sudden now no one's feeling safe anywhere. And that has a real destabilizing effect. In an insurgency point of view, that casts doubt upon the legitimacy of the existing government's ability to protect its citizens. So that's more of a strategic impact.
And what is then the psychological goal of something like that in a country this size? There's fear, there's destabilization, but you take 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 attacks like this. What are they looking to crumble by those sort of tactics?
Depends on who's doing it and what their ultimate goals are. Most of these people will probably publish their goals, their demands, whether it's the U.S. out of the Middle East, stopping support for Israel, or something domestic where they're looking for demands from the U.S. government within the United States. So it just all depends on where they're coming from and what their particular ideology is.
So I'm going to make a prediction because I think I just feel that it is only a matter of time until they do this particular thing. And maybe I've shared this with you before. I agree with what you're saying about small towns, a small town school. Go take it over 20 kids, disappear into the woods. You got, the state police are on the way, but they're an hour away. They got a couple of local cops, and they're way outgunned. And there's 15 guys, 5 guys, they're in the woods. Maybe they catch one of them. This is my nightmare that I just think is so, so easily doable, is they keep doing these vehicle protests, and they just shut down these freeways. So I think about, where we live, Seattle, and they've got that funky waterfront tunnel, which is not super well built. Yeah. And they do a protest. They shut down the traffic ahead of that tunnel, and they get out the Hamas flags and the ISIS flags, and, it's just another protest. It's just another inconvenience on a Friday afternoon at 5:30. And then once the cars are good and stopped, and there's 200, 400, 500, 1,000 people, that's when the jihadists who are on the other side of the tunnel get out. They meet in the middle, and they start going through the cars and plugging people. And when first responders finally get there, that's when they light off the actual car-bound bombs, right? That's when they actually light that off. And there's all sorts of escape doors up and down that tunnel that people who know where they're at and have practiced that activity, they can be out of there in 5 minutes and into the ether of a city. To me, it's just a matter of time until they do something like that. They'd have to be stupid to not do that.
It almost sounds like you've done a target analysis using the Carver matrix to determine the criticality and vulnerability of a target.
Yeah, I don't like to brag. Okay, so I want you to explain that second, what you just said. I want you to explain what you just said, why it sounds like I did that, okay? There is a guy right now in the live chat room. It is John from Alan Soaps. I see him there. Hi, good morning, John. John is Alan's dad. Alan is 14 now, just turned 14. He's been through 18 operations. He's effectively nonverbal given his placement on the autism spectrum. It doesn't stop him from being a brilliant inventor of soaps. And you have a decision to make. It's a super easy one, in my opinion. It's absolutely no-brainer. Go look at the soap you use and ask yourself, do I have a good reason for using this? Okay, it's just probably going to be this. Well, it's cheap. It's what I've always done. Cool. Here's a reason to use Alan's. We employ people like Alan and Ian and Amy that the rest of the world would say are useless eaters. Yeah, I know John, his dad, is watching and listening to this, but John's the guy who told me these things. The doctor has said, hey, there's your little boy in your daughter, in your mom's, or your wife's womb. Let's baby. And John said, no. His wife said, no, we're going to raise our son. So now he's fruitfully employed. The soap is made in America. It's all natural. It's made with all natural ingredients. It's made by a family, not a machine. 3 generations of soap making expertise. So next time you wash your body or your hands, you can say, why do I use this soap? All those reasons. Go to allensoaps.com/Todd. That's allensoaps.com/Todd. You get 10% off everything there. So you said it's almost like I used the Carver analysis to find the points of, would you say, vulnerability? Unpack that and explain that for us.
CARVER is an acronym that's been used by special forces for decades to do a target assessment. You can use it offensively to figure out the best way, to attack a target. Like, how is it vulnerable? How critical is it to the enemy? And you can also use it defensively. I use it defensively a lot to help businesses become more resilient and stronger. So it's if you look at the equation, you have threat, which is what possible threats are out there that might come after you or come after something in general, your vulnerability to that threat, and then the combination of threat and vulnerability equals your risk. So the idea behind the defensive target analysis is to reduce the vulnerability to the threats that are out there, and thus you lower your risk.
So in that scenario that I provided you, then we can talk about businesses and homes and people's lives, like walking through a mall, or say, some people are going to go to the Super Bowl. They're going to go to the college football championship. Like, maybe there's ways to reduce your risk in public there. Let's go back through the scenario I presented you. The waterfront tunnel in Seattle, which replaced the beautiful Alaska Way Viaduct, a road I actually love to drive on. It's right there on the waterfront, has a seawall next to it. A high enough payload of explosives could put that seawall at risk. It would put the first responders in a real conundrum. I mean, if you have enough payload in that tunnel to create one crack in that seawall, that tunnel is done, and everyone in it is done. They stop traffic all the time. As I said, there's multiple exit points, doors that you can get out. They're built there. They're emergency exits on purpose. Sure, they're under surveillance, but now first responders can't even get to the scene, let alone get to all the exit points. You've got all sorts of people fleeing, and you just blend into the fleeing crowd. So with the Carver Index or Carver analysis, how does a city like Seattle reduce risk in a circumstance like that?
It's not easy, because, like I said, the good guys have to be right every single time. They have to get it right. They can't get it wrong. The bad guys only have to get it right once. It's an old kind of an old cliche, but it's very true. You have to potentially put restrictions on what goes through that tunnel. I'm sure hazmat's not allowed to go through, but like I said, you don't know what's inside a box truck.
Right.
It could be, look what happened in Oklahoma City.
Right.
Back in the early 90s with a bunch of fertilizer and diesel fuel.
Right.
That's the kind of scenario you have to worry about. And then if they're really dedicated and they're well trained, you also have to worry about secondary devices and attacks on first responders or places where the crowd gathers to get away from what was the initial crisis site.
Yeah. So I would say this, and you're the expert. One thing I would just say to me is a no-brainer is don't let them stop traffic anymore. Take that tactic away because right now that tactic is treated as blasé. It's annoying, hey, it's an inconvenience, but oh my gosh, they always doing this. No, do not normalize that. Respond to that instantly, drag the cars off, bring in tow trucks, make it costly, be quick on a scene like that. So that tactic gets harder for them to do because it's not been normalized. I want to get back to the big picture here in a second, because there's something else that really just occurred to me that really, really bothers me, that we had two active duty, one former U.S. serviceman involved in this attack on the same day, same car rental company, all that. I'll put a pin in that for this second. There's a lot of people going to be taking their kids to the Super Bowl, to the college football championship. You were just mentioning this scenario where, hey, this is where the crowds gather. You don't have to make it in a sports venue. So you've been helping individuals protect themselves. How do you have situational awareness around 80,000 people?
you have to be in the moment. You have to be living in the moment. And there's an example, an unfortunate example from the New Orleans attack, where I published a video clip on our Instagram page, where there's 3 people in the middle of Bourbon Street, and one woman is there. Her head's down in her phone. The other 2, all of a sudden, they hear or they sense the approaching danger. They start reacting. She is late to react. So the other 2, the first 2, they managed to get off the X. The X is where the bad thing happens. She started reacting. It looks like it's too late. I can't tell for sure in the video if she was hit, but there's a very good chance she did not survive that because that vehicle came through so fast. So you have to live in the moment. Get the heads out of the cell phone. Pay attention to what's going on around you. Not only be listening for things happening in the distance. There was another vehicle attack some years back in Nice, France, where the truck barreled through for over a mile, hitting people. I think some 80 people in a place that was reserved for pedestrians. So you have to live in the moment, pay attention to what's happening in the distance, but also read the people around you.
Okay, so then there's also something you shared with us on this program before is suspend your disbelief.
Vanquish denial.
Vanquish denial. And I was watching in that footage that after the truck had gone by, and the truck had, the truck hadn't done this. Now I sound like the Mockingbird media. The person driving the truck, the jihadist, did this. He had mowed down people in that white electric truck. Oh, by the way, they both rented electric trucks. Mm-hmm. Just still bugs me. I'm still uneasy about all the coincidi. But the truck goes by, and there's some young women. They ran into a building, and this is they live, but they're like, man, we're getting inside. I thought that was a good call, because hey, maybe there's another truck. Dude stands there. He was unmoved, and I look at that guy, and I'm reading into his mind of, wow, we had a car accident. No, you didn't. You just watched a series of protect yourself, get out of there, get protection. But you've talked to us about scenarios in malls where there's mall shootings, and people are in the cafeteria or whatever that's called, the eatery.
Yeah, the food court.
They're in the food court. Pop, 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 pop. And then we look at each other. Those sound like gunshots. Oh, no, those aren't gunshots. Is that what you mean by vanquishing denial?
Yes. Vanquishing denial is the second part of what I call the 3-part triad of situational awareness. Denial has an oppressive body count filled with people who couldn't accept that it was happening right here, right now, and it was happening to them. I've got, when I teach situational awareness, I have a video clip I use that I've taken from a number of interviews following mass shootings, and each person saying, I thought it was fireworks. I thought it was fireworks. I thought it was fireworks. Fireworks don't go off in mall food courts. You have to think that it's gunfire until it's proven otherwise. Now, I understand that most people aren't shooters. They haven't been shot at before. They don't necessarily know what it sounds like. They might hear the big loud booms from a movie, those sound effects. It doesn't necessarily sound like that in person when it's really happening. But you have to understand, the first part of situational awareness is making the conscious decision to mentally switch on. And you keep flipping that mental switch until it automatically stays on. And you vanquish denial. You have to understand that bad things happen to good people. And it can happen to you. And it can happen right here, right now. And you have to understand, that you have to be cognizant of, okay, how do I get out of here? What am I doing? I'm always looking for exit points. What do I do if this happens? I'm not standing there looking at my cell phone. If I have to look at my cell phone, if I'm in a public space, then I'm going to either try to go inside somewhere or I'm going to put my back against the wall and still pay attention, head still on a swivel. You're not paranoid, like some people say that's paranoia. No. The situationally aware who live in a relaxed state of alertness don't have to be paranoid.
Yeah, and people can get in touch with you to get help with it, either for themselves or their organizations, for their churches, which, God forbid. And apparently in New Orleans, some of the IEDs that were placed, one of them was placed next to a Catholic church. And, this guy said it was a war between the believers and non-believers. This is what the jihadis said. How can people get in touch with you for their organizations that you can come and train them?
They can email us at aoc.security@adopcon.com. That's ADOPCON.com. That's a direct email to the company. They can go to our website, which is adopcon.com. They can people should sign up for our newsletters. Next time we have a situational awareness training coming up, we'll publish that. We'll push it out to everyone that's on the list. They can it's AOC _ security on Instagram and on Twitter, on X.
People make a decision, I think. This is the way I describe it, and I've described this to my daughter. I don't have your background, never served, but I've been around enough of you guys for enough years that when we go into a situation, I've told my daughter when we went on security runs, when she was thinking of moving to Canada, I took her on a walkthrough in downtown Spokane and said, we're going to look through Dad's eyes. Okay. We get out of the car, we make a decision, we're going to survive anything. So I was showing her, what do I see? We're walking through the park, and I look across the street, and I say, there's 3 people gathered in that alley. Why are they there? She goes, well, I don't know. Well, let's think about it. Why do people stand around in alleys?
Yeah.
Right? And so we don't know why they're there, but we can make some suppositions as we're watching. Oh, look, that one guy's handing another guy something. So they're trading something. Do people trade things they're proud of secretly? So what's our decision? We just stay away from that. We made this decision as we were waiting. I was saying, let's pretend we're waiting for a bus. Show me how you wait for a bus. And she got up to the bus station. I said, how do you know what's behind you? So I showed her how to stand with her back to a post, right? Here's how you do this. In a case like the Super Bowl, a case like the college football championship, these events that are coming up, I hear you saying you make the decision to survive something like that by walking in and already analyzing, okay, so if a truck did come, let's say it made up on the side when it was coming for me. How do I protect my family now? What is this scenario? If there is a shooter and they're coming at the crowd, where are we going? So you're deciding that as you're walking up to the venue, you've already made these decisions.
Yeah, you're looking for obstacles like on the side of the road, whether it's traffic lights, light posts, telephone poles that you can get between you and a racing vehicle if the need arises. In the clip that you're talking about where the folks were like the guys just standing there, I think it's the one where you have the redheaded woman managed to get in, just barely get out of the way.
Yeah.
If you look, I mean, if he'd have come up on the sidewalk, he would have got most of those people. But if you look a little bit further up the street in the direction the vehicle's coming from, looks like there's a dumpster there. That's an obstacle. So know where those are. If you're going to be watching a parade somewhere, put yourself next to something. A couple years back, someone attacked a Christmas parade here in the U.S. and just plowing through the bands and and people there. Know where those obstacles are. If it's even a U.S. mailbox that's cemented into the street, something that you can use for cover, which protects you from the attack. Is there an alcove? Do you have just a blank wall behind you, or is there an alcove where you can get in a little bit and off the sidewalk if they come racing down the sidewalk? If you're going to a venue, why not be the first one there? Get through security fastest. Don't wait in the crowd. Schedule yourself accordingly. You and I have been to lunch several times, right, over the years.
We're always early.
Yeah, but who always gets there first?
Well, actually, me.
Huh? Yeah, it's usually me. The one time I was offset.
Yeah. Oh, it's right. You were watching, but I got here before you this morning, but only 5 minutes. And but there's that also that on time is late, etc. But no, that's great advice. Get there early, get in, because at least there's some security screening. I mean, it might not be perfect security screening, but there's some there's some good security screening. Jason Vanderkooi, this is from the live stream. Jason is he does a lot of things. He's a farmer, he's a first responder, paramedic. He does a lot of things. He doesn't just this cop duty as well. As first responders, we're trained to always have our head on a swivel. You never know what is coming in any direction, especially accident scenes on high-speed roadways, but even on aid calls. So you guys are trained for that. There's this. I want to talk about individuals and then wind back up into the individuals that apparently did these things and the greater picture of what ISIS is looking for in personalities, because what I'm really bothered by are 2 military personnel on the same day, because to me, that sends a really disconcerting message. I shared with you the story of my wife and I dancing in this roadhouse, and some guys started coming in, and I realized they're wrong, and then they were banditos, and I talked my wife into leaving. This is another circumstance. We lived in an area of town that bordered a not great area of town, and my wife was pregnant, and believe it or not, she was jonesing for ice cream. That never happens, but she was, and I weighed 400 pounds at the time, so what's another 10 pounds? So I drove up to get myself some ice cream, and I walk into a 7-Eleven that had been there 100 times. I'm back at the ice cream thing, and I turn around, and it's a summer night. It's like 88 degrees, high humidity, and here come 3 guys with great big jackets and hats on their heads. And that was my first attention grabber. That's not right. And then one guy started trailing 2 of them around the store, looking over the shelves at them, hands in his pockets. I'm out. I'm done. And I leave the store. I drive out. I'm thinking, I got to call the cops. But what am I going to say? Guy has his hand in his pockets.
Yeah.
So I drove up to another store and went home. Next day in the news, there was a shooting in that store. So it was their gang shooting. 2 guys were shot. I can't remember if anybody died, but 2 guys were shot. And it was a half hour after I left that this thing happened. Talk about individuals, that situational awareness. What are you looking for to be cautious if you're in these crowd scenarios that we've been talking about? Show me the profile.
A lot of people who have been victims of violent encounters have said that they knew something was off, something was wrong before it happened, but they didn't want to be accused of profiling based on race, socioeconomic status. So their denial won over their judgment, their gut instinct. Gut instinct's the third part of the situational awareness triad. So situationally aware, you do profile, but it's not based on race. It's not based on perceived socioeconomic status. It's based on demeanor and behavior. Like you saw, like what looks out of place. If something looks out of place, it usually is. Summer day, big heavy coats. Okay, usually someone's only going to wear that to conceal something, either something they already have or something they're going to require. So you're looking for demeanor. You're looking for the things. You're trusting your gut. Your gut instinct or women's intuition, and women are really good at situational awareness once they've learned to switch on and obey that gut instinct. Your gut instinct's just that primitive Ice Age part of your brain that's been hardwired into us for hundreds of thousands of years to protect us from danger. And you have to start, by vanquishing denial, you then free yourself to start listening to that gut instinct. And then you're going to start picking up on the clues around you. What looks out of place, who's paying too much attention to me, who's making a beeline towards me on an intercept course. Then maybe I cross the street. So you take those avoidance behaviors, and it's just situational awareness is the art of avoiding trouble.
Yeah. And I would say it this way, that I think God gave us the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit can sense things, can sense the presence of evil. Evil is a thing. It's an identity. It's a spirit. And if you can sense a thing is wrong, that might be God speaking to you. We're told not to have a spirit of fear, but we're also given the skepticism. And in those crowd scenarios, there's other things that the Cybertruck circled the block countless times. So I'm thinking through the scenario of why would a box truck continue to circle the block? It has deliveries to make. Those are busy people. They're usually paid by the delivery. I mean, they don't want to be circling a block. That's wasting their time and money. If I'm at the college football game, which I'm not going to be, then I see a box truck go by for the 5th time, I'm able to look at that going, okay, that's not right. They know where they're going. They're not going to be wasting time. Unless it's an ad on the side, I'd be looking for things like that as well.
Yeah, that, and if you see a vehicle, try to pay attention to the driver. What's their demeanor like? How are they behaving? Having done a lot of surveillance and counter surveillance, and then training people in both, you start seeing things in vehicles and traffic. I'm very attuned to if I'm going through a parking lot, noticing vehicles that are occupied, but no one appears to be getting out or getting in, and like putting groceries away. So you get attuned to that. Then what's their demeanor? If they're head down on the phone, okay, there might be someone that's just tuned out. But are they paying attention to what's going on around them? Once you're switched on, you start seeing everyone else who is. You start picking up on their behavior. You can tell when someone, even if they're exercising relaxed alertness, you can tell when they're switched on, you can say, okay, you know, I'm going to keep an eye on him. It might be someone who could be an ally if something happens, but it could also be someone who's setting up to do something bad.
Yeah, yep. And so in terms of setting up to do bad, I want to wind this back to my gut feeling. Okay, this is my gut feeling, and yours is different apparently. We have two guys who, one was active military, had a stellar career. Another guy appeared to have a career. I don't know that it was a distinguished career, but he had one. They come from the same military base, and you've said, Todd, there's 60,000 people there, bud. That's bad analysis. Okay, I'm just saying gut. They both rent electric vehicles, electric trucks. They both have remote blow-up devices, and they both go and eventually, like one guy doesn't apparently succeed in triggering that, but they both have weapons that appear to be after-action weapons, rifles. Now, the cog in this, of course, is the Las Vegas guy apparently shot himself in the head, or that was inflicted by a bullet wound. That's what the cop said. Had a bullet wound inflicted, maybe upon him, but we don't know. Thinking like ISIS, you have activated a cell of active duty and former military. That would be a huge fundraiser. That would be a huge thing to take to evil jihadi donors to say, we told you we have these cells. We've got access to military people. Now we're going to start turning those on. That really worries me. I don't see any reason to believe that about the Las Vegas guy. Again, appeared to have a stellar career. But my gut tells me, wouldn't that be the dream get for ISIS?
Yeah, I want to say, though, that, it's absolutely gut-wrenching that a Special Forces brother, did something like this. And I don't think he was motivated by any jihadic goals or anything like that. There's still more to follow on that. What ISIS has been doing, and Al-Qaeda for years, they've been calling them, we used to use the term lone wolves. Now in the security industry, we say lone actors because some people might think the term lone wolf is kind of glorifying and might inspire them.
Yeah.
But they've been trying to get lone actors to do things for years, and they're succeeding, not on a completely regular basis, but often enough that it's worrying. And it's that kind of influence. And that's still the more likely scenario. The more dangerous, what we call the MDCOA, most dangerous course of action, will be, a cell doing a complex attack. Most likely course of action is additional lone actors, additional vehicle ramming attacks. Why a vehicle ramming attack? Because they work. Yeah. People are vulnerable out there, especially in crowds. They're not paying attention. It's so that's your most likely. I expect in the coming year, we'll probably see additional copycats, probably more of them in Europe than in the United States. But there's absolutely no reason not to expect something to happen here. I mean, in the industry and me personally, and us talking privately, I've said it's coming.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people who said the big one is coming too, that multi-city, high-casualty events are coming. I've said this countless times. You would have to believe that now I'm not saying moral equivalence, but tactical, strategic equivalence. Haven't looked and done the scenario that a goof, did about a tunnel. They've got better plans than I have. I mean, and more catastrophic. This is from Nate Moe, watching us live on Rumble. And he asked us, so if we're caught in a protest roadblock, how should we handle that situation? And he put 2 question marks in that. So what do you do? You're in that car. They've shut down the roads. You can't go anywhere, and you're being blocked. And I brought about that scenario of, okay, there's going to be a time when they get out of their cars and start shooting people and stuff starts blowing up. That's a great question. What do you do in that scenario?
I mean, if you're caught in that, if nothing kinetic is happening, by that means, shootings, people throwing firebombs and stuff,
Yep.
You're probably safer in your vehicle, but you also need to make that assessment. You may need to abandon the vehicle and get out there. Remember, I said the X is the place where bad things happen. You have to get yourself off the X.
Okay.
So if something's happening, get out, abandon the vehicle. It might get towed later, it might get burned, but at least you're not inside it.
So it's, again, another scenario where you're making the decision ahead of time. So you're stopped in traffic, And here's the way my mind would work. I would say, okay, right now I'm in my car. I'm going to be armed. So I'm going to make sure I've got good access to my weapon, do a press check. Okay, I'm okay. I'm going to be able to at least defend myself and my family. But I might also be, if I'm in that tunnel, I may be looking, okay, exit ahead of me, behind me. I'd be treating it like an airplane. Now, for me, if I start seeing people getting out of their cars up there, I'm out. I mean, if I'm alone, that's one thing. But if I'm with my daughter, yeah, we're out. We're going to hit that exit door right now. And you know what? We're just going to stand there. And maybe we're not going to go anywhere. But if bad things start happening, we're done. We're out. So is that viable?
Yeah. Don't necessarily think in terms of, I've decided ahead of time before an event happens exactly what I'm going to do. But because you have to consider the options before an event happens.
Okay.
So be prepared to do A or B or C, depending on how the situation is unfolding.
Okay.
So have that by having your situational awareness turned on. You've got that mental agility to be looking around, looking near and far, look in depth. What's happening around you, and then you've already know that you've got some decisions that you can make. And then when you make that decision, execute it decisively.
Remember when I was with my daughter, we were down in Des Moines Beach, and we were, the tide was way out. It was an amazing day, and we were digging clams, and we were finding crabs and some big crabs and sea stars. And I'd set these sticks in the sand. And my point was, I'm going to watch the sticks to see where the tide is at. Because if the tide comes in real quickly, we're out. And so I probably do border on paranoia. And my daughter still tells that story of, it was really cool, though, because the sticks started getting covered up. And I got to watch while the tide's coming in. She said, but what were you concerned about? I said, tsunami. The tide was way out when we got there. I'd never seen it that far out. That was weird. So if it started coming back in quick, we're gone. We're out of there. So you're saying don't make the course of action, but you're in that tunnel, you're on that freeway, you're up high, you're on a third level freeway. You're going to be thinking, okay, there's 2 or 3 exits behind me. Are there ladders? Hey, is there a truck I could get into? Like, is there a secure vehicle? Are there cops around? Right? How can I get out of this? So that you've now stockpiled A, B, and C scenario, but you're looking for, you are going to be aware of a trigger moment. 4 different people just got out of a car at the same time, and they're walking this way. I'm out.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we appreciate you having all this expertise, and I want to tell you, I hope I didn't cause you pain by talking about your special forces brother in that way, in that thinking that he might have been radicalized.
Yeah. I mean,
I see no sign of that.
People are asking questions, and you're right to ask questions. Questions need to be asked. Everything needs to be looked at. I said it's just personally gut wrenching that it happened to someone, from I wasn't in 10th Special Forces group, but it's someone from my regiment, someone who's probably obviously in a lot of pain or for whatever happened, and we've lost far too many of our number to after they've survived combat.
Yeah. Far too many. Appreciate you coming on, Mike. And hey, listen, God's will be with these families. We need to pray into that and make sure that we remember that we've talked about this like it's a news event, and I want to just continue to impress upon people. This isn't a news event to the people who lost loved ones and to the people who now have loved ones responsible for deaths. So, Lord, thank you for the opportunity to this show. Thank you for the week of programming. Thank you for everybody who joined us live, everybody watching and or listening later. This is the Todd Herman Show. Please go be well, be strong, be kind, and please make every effort to walk in the light of Christ.